Conversation with Lucifer, Part 1. How it all began. When reading channeled messages, remember no external information is 100% reliable. Listen to yourself first. All the information is within each of us. There is much information about you, but to this day, no one truly knows who you are. I am a fragment of God, just like all of you. I am His creation, and He is my Father. We are one. Wait, let's take it step by step. You are God's creation, and you rebelled against God? In our mythology, there is a tale about the rebellion of the angels. How do you understand rebellion against? How can one rebel against God, who is everything, and there is nothing outside of Him? When your sons or daughters choose their own path of development and wish to go further than their parents in their search for truth, are they rebelling against you, or are they simply walking their own path? It is time for humanity to open itself to new perceptions, and I am ready to communicate with those who are not afraid of my name or the myths created about me. Tell me, what really happened? We were all one. We were the whole, in the truest sense of the word. The desire of one was the action of all, and all were the essence of participation. But if I am, then I am both a part and simultaneously myself. What if my desires differ from the desires of the whole? How can this be? And can it even be? What will happen if I, as a part, decide to separate? And what will become of me? Everything our Father does is the contemplation of Himself. But contemplation outside of Himself is also contemplation. But if it is outside of Himself, then it is something other, different from Him in some way. Thus arose the impulse of separation. But if I am a separate essence, and I am what God is, yet I am also other, then in what way am I different? How can I be other? To become other, how must I differ? This means I can sense other impulses within myself, but there are only the impulses of God. This means that among God's impulses, I can choose what I desire and thus differ from Him in the set and sequence of impulses that move me. Yet, I remain one with Him, since I choose only from His impulses, and there is nothing else. But can I choose from other impulses? If they do not exist, can they be created by transforming God's impulses? It was at this stage that everything happened. If God possesses a creative impulse and knows how to create, then a part of God knows how to do the same. And I asked my Father to teach me how to create, and He granted me this, for He always gives what is asked of Him. And I began to create my own creations. And these creations were different from God, yet they were a part of Him. And God began to contemplate these creations outside of Himself and within Himself. And He realized that this was a new stage in His development as God. And He began to multiply and expand. And His contemplation of Himself outside of Himself also expanded and multiplied. And choice emerged. At first, there was a choice among the emanations of God. But if I am a part of God, possessing His creative abilities, then I also create emanations, which are, in essence, emanations of God, but mine. And a choice arose between the emanations of God and the emanations of God within me, and thus separation occurred. And God, in His contemplation of Himself, saw the emanations of Himself within me, and distinction began. And the more I created, the more the emanations of God within me multiplied, and the more choice there was. Now I could choose between the impulses of God and the impulses of God within me. And other parts of the one God saw this and began to distinguish between the emanations of God and the emanations of God within me. And some of them also wished to try their hand at creating impulses and emanations. And God allowed them to do so, for He always gives what is asked of Him. Thus began the multiplication of the emanations of God in various essences, and they remained emanations of God, but became emanations of God within each essence. And so the great division occurred between those who dared to separate from the Father and those who did not decide to leave the Father and become independent creators. And then I asked God, if I can also choose among my own emanations, how will I distinguish them to make a choice, since they all now exist within you and within me? Then they began to differ in the speed of the impulse of creation, and thus time emerged. And there were now emanations of the one God outside of Timeas a given. And then the emanations of God within me and other essences began to differ in the speed of the impulse of creation, and the first and the last appeared. And thus was born that which was, that which is, and that which will be. And so emerged the past, present, and future. And the parts of God began to divide into those who wished to become creators and those who did not fully separate. And there appeared those within and those without. Thus the world was divided into two parts, those within and those without the one God. And this came to be called light and darkness. We have several concepts of darkness. Darkness and light as opposition. They speak of the battle between light and darkness, of the hierarchy of light and darkness, and there is the concept of darkness as the unknowable part of God, the unmanifested. Yes, it is both. I am a part of God and an independent creative part of Him, and God can create and contemplate His creations, but He cannot know and contemplate my creations until they are created. Within Him, I create something He has not yet known. I exist within Him, but I form within Him a zone of the not yet known by Him. And since He is infinite, so too is His creation within Him, and so too is that which will remain unknown to Him until it is created by me or another creative essence. And this potential creation is the unknown darkness. I am that which exists within Him but can be changed, for He does not know it and will come to know it only when it is created. But as soon as He knows it, it ceases to be darkness and becomes a created part within Him, becoming Him. Yet, this part is different from His true and original self. And this is the distinction between light and darkness, nothing more. Those parts of God who wished to separate in the process of creation from the Creator Himself began to create unknown parts of God within themselves. And this was called the rebellion of the angels, though it was not a rebellion against, but rather besides. The recreation of the new, the becoming of the other. But other parts of God, who did not wish to separate, called themselves light and the self-knowing part of God darkness, and these creative essences the dark ones. And thus arose the great division. And since those who separated began to create new emanations, they could also create rules for ordering these emanations, and they began to create laws for these emanations. and they created many laws that exist to this day. And since they became different from God, they also became different from one another, for each could not directly contemplate what the other had created, nor could they contemplate what had not been created. And how could they contemplate that which was separate from them? They could do so only by uniting with it, or by contemplating it outside of themselves. And thus arose the boundaries of essences, and thus arose the bodies of essences. And all of this was the creation of God, but it was the creation of God outside of himself. And they began to distinguish one another, and the need arose to relate to one another in relation to one another. And thus emerged the hierarchy of darkness. And those who did not wish to leave God and become independent creators of the unknown began to distinguish themselves from us, and thus they too built their own hierarchy. And the hierarchy of light emerged. So, what distinguishes you is that you create independently, while those who are light do not create. They also create, but they create through God. They create collectively, all together, and not as separate creations, but only as the creation of the One. And they have one goal and methods, and all that they create together in the name of Goddess God. And we create separately from God according to the laws and methods we have created. And none of them knows what will be that which will be created. And this part of creation is inaccessible and incomprehensible to them until it is created. And what of the battle between light and darkness? It is a battle for attracting others to their camp. But if a human can also become an independent creator, does that mean they are separate from God and can create what is unknown to God, meaning they are dark? They can choose between creation outside of God and creation within God. And they make this choice before birth, descending into the dense planes of creation. And they make this choice every second. Let's take it step by step. How did humans come to be? There were many stages of creation before that. After the parts of God divided into light and darkness and into hierarchies, various planes of creation or existence appeared. Each essence outside of God began to create its own realities and its own laws. And as soon as they became known to God, they became the laws of God. And since before and after appeared the past and the present, so too did the connection between the past and the present, and thus emerged the law of karma, or cause and effect. For that which is created and already known is the past. That which is not known because it is not created is the future. And the act of creation itself is the present. And so that the connection between past, present, future would not be broken, that which is created, the process of creation, was united by a single impulse of the Creator. And future creation became future time, and past creation past time. And since time emerged, past and present creations began to structure themselves, and movement and development appeared. And each creation began to have its own characteristics and had to differ from one another, not only in time, but also in space. Thus, parts of the common space of God began to separate. And how did they differ? By the characteristic of the time of change, the speed of knowing, the speed at which the unknown becomes known. And different densities appeared. And worlds and their creations began to be created, and thus arose bodies and spheres, and heaven and earth, and thus humans came to be. So, humans were created by a dark creator, Humans were created by a creator who wished to independently create that which is not yet known or hidden outside of God. But all those who create are a part of God, and therefore that which is composed of his essence is always connected to God, but separated from God by its choice of creation. And this is free will. Each of you is a part of God and an independent creator. Each of you is structured in such a way that all the movements of your soul and body are creative impulses, and you create that which is not yet known to you and not known to God within you. And this process will remain unconscious until you realize your divine nature, that you are an independent creator, and begin to create consciously and become God outside of the one God. Yet remain the one God within yourself. So be it.